Welcome to episode 93 of the Clarity Compressed podcast. Obviously, this is not my office. Clarity can only really exist in the light of truth. Branding just isn't a tactic. It's a lifestyle change.
The moment of clarity this week comes from a very, very personal place. We have a baby in the Daly household. Again, a 1-month-old. It's a long story, but I realized that I need a lot less sleep than I would have told you that I needed a month ago before he came to be with us. So the moment of clarity is that most of the things in your life are a matter of perspective. Like a month ago, I thought I needed a lot more sleep than I do because here I am a month in of interrupted sleep, waking up every 2 to 3 hours, getting less sleep overall than I have been getting. And you know what? I actually feel good still. So I would have been wrong if I told you how much sleep I needed, but it's a matter of perspective because if you would have told me I could live on this amount of sleep and still feel good, I wouldn't have believed you. But now that I have this perspective, because I've actually gone to this side of a fence and I'm getting this less amount of sleep, now I know actually what the truth is. So push past the boundary of what you think is the constraint in your life because it's a matter of perspective. A lot of people, and even you, can probably do more with less. I'm not saying burn yourself out. I'm not saying sleep less. I think you get the point. So that's my little moment of clarity coming out of a very, very awesome and personal and sleepless experience.
I'm so excited for what he's gonna show me. Hurry up and show me Paul's pick.
What's up this week for Paul's pick? I got some custom Nikes to do a little unboxing. If you're just listening, you're not watching. These are a pair of Nike Air Force Ones, go figure. And these are specifically partnered with Gore-Tex, the breathable waterproof material, because I live in upstate New York, so there's all kinds of crappy weather, and when I wear my Nikes in the winter and you step out of the car and your foot sinks into the puddle and all of a sudden your ankle is wet, your sock is wet, your shoe is wet, and your day is ruined, well, that's no good. So then I have to wear boots, but I like wearing Nike Air Force Ones, and it's like they heard my pain, and I'm unboxing right now the very first pair of Nike Gore-Tex semi-high tops with a waterproof boot. Boom. There you go. If you are just listening to the podcast, you have to see these shoes. So my pick for this week are these amazing Nike Air Force Ones with the Gore-Tex technology. You got to check them out. That's my pick for this week. A company who listens to my needs.
Today, I'm standing in front of the Atlantic Ocean. I'm just getting through a conference called Automotive Analytics and Attribution, and AAAS for short, put on by Brian Pash. And it's got me thinking all types of things when it comes to actually the concept of fear and the fear that comes with change. So I just spent the last few days at this beautiful spot with about 100 to 200 auto dealers and other industry vendors, and we're talking about how to move into the next kind of era of automotive advertising. And there's a lot of concentration on data and analytics, and as you can understand, like that's kind of how the retail world works these days. And you know me and you know my message, so I come at it from a little bit of a different angle, but a brand first perspective. And you can see it click in the minds of people when they see, wow, talking about marketing in terms of story, in terms of connection, like very human terms, makes rational sense once you see it, makes rational sense when you think about how you actually act as a consumer. But then when it comes time to like communicate this to the general managers or to the owners, I can just see the fear in the marketing director's eyes because now they have to go back and convince somebody of something that some guy said at some conference, and they realize there's going to be this inherent fear of change. And a number of episodes back, we had Dr. Nicole Lipkin on, and we talked about what actually happens in the human mind when such change actually comes in. And the immediate response is fear. It's a protectionism. I alluded to it a little bit in last week's podcast, but I have just spent a lot of time wrestling with fear over the last week or two because we have now launched the Brand is Gravity workshops into the world. And like any creative knows, when you make something and then you put it out into the world, there's this moment before you release it where you think, everyone's going to hate this, and then what am I going to do about it? That workshop, in the midst of congruent and the stress of producing it, also causes a lot of anxiety and causes a lot of stress and pressure. And even as a leader, I start to think, oh my gosh, can I even pull the team through this? And all these fearful voices start to stack up inside my head. And when we face change in the industry, all these fearful voices start to stack up inside our head. And then before you know it, we start to believe them. And then the chain reaction begins. And really what happens in terms of fear is it's like we hear one little piece of bad news, and then it's, oh no, what if this happens? Oh, and then this is definitely going to happen. Oh, and definitely we're going to go out of business, and then I'm not going to have any money, and then I'm going to lose my house, and then I'll be homeless, and then I'm going to die. And the funny thing is, we actually take it that way. If you've ever lost a job or been threatened of being laid off, you naturally take that progression of, I might lose a job, to I'm going to die. And somebody I refer to a lot, his name is Seth Godin. I've been thinking about something that he said lately when it comes to the topic of fear. And he kind of frames it up by saying, well, you'll never read a book that's called How to Run a Marathon Without Getting Tired. That book doesn't exist because it's impossible to run a marathon without getting tired. And so he says, where do you put the tired? When you're a marathon runner, it's not that you won't get tired and exhausted. It's where do you put it once it happens? And fear is the same concept. Where do you put the fear once it comes? Because there's no such thing as changing without fear. I made a post last week on Instagram, talked about courage only happens once you're afraid. Courage can't happen until you're afraid. And if change is something that makes you afraid, then change is something that requires courage. And I think when a lot of us look in the mirror, we naturally don't look in the mirror and say, there's a courageous person staring back at me. And so before that happens, it's important to flood your mind with the positive things. And the reality is that change doesn't lead to death. That change, every good thing that has ever happened in your life, every single good thing that has ever happened in your life has been the result of something changing. And when you think about it in terms of that, it starts to frame it up a little bit better that actually good things come from change. And until you change, those good things can't come. So all of this has been swirling around in my mind as I'm looking in the eyes of an industry that is faced with change, and that's automotive, but there are a lot of other retail industries that have been affected by technology, and the change is stacking up. So that's the topic of this podcast. It's kind of the thought I wanted to leave you with. It's going to be a short one this week because I have to go swimming. I'm not going swimming, but the conference actually isn't over. I have one more thing to go to. But that's what I want you to think about. You likely, as an entrepreneur or someone who's trying to advance in your career, or even maybe as a new parent, or you're in a new relationship, or a relationship's having a hard time, is that change is afoot, and that change brings fear. And I want you to remember that nothing good can come unless something first changes. And so the fear and the fearful voices usually aren't true. And so whatever change you're in the middle of today, I want you to think of it that way. What good can come of this change? I'm excited about this change in the branding and marketing space. I'm excited about the change. Some of the changes are going on in my life as a leader. We're releasing this new Brand is Gravity product. And yes, it's brought fear, but I also know it's bringing a good thing, and it can bring more good things, but only if my mind is straight and I'm attacking it with that mentality. Once you start attacking it from the fearful mentality, you start to make dumb decisions. You start to stay and sleep longer than you should. You eat more than you should. You do all kinds of things that you shouldn't do. So I hope this week, Clarity Compressed audience, that you will remember that good things come as a result of change. And when that fear creeps up, it's not how can I do this without getting afraid? It's where do I put the fear when I do get afraid? So be courageous this week. Pursue clarity this week, and I will see you next week on episode 94.